Hi, thanks for joining us for the next installment of Bridging the Gap. I'm Lisa Kirschenbauer, founder and president of Omega Wealth Management in Arlington, Virginia. And joining me today, as always, is Jared Jones, Director of Investments and Associate Financial Advisor at Omega. So, hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here. We got some good topics to talk about. Excited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think we're making our way into summer a little bit. So, changing things up, opening up things around here. So, Bridging the Gap, as the title indicates, we've launched the show to bring you different perspectives on money, markets, and really life as well. Whether it's the lens of gender, generation, or political orientation, we hope to inform, educate, and entertain you. So today we've got three topics we want to talk about. The first one is something that I've been talking a lot about, actually maybe complaining a little bit within our firm about bankruptcy. Mostly we're going to talk about business bankruptcy, but I want to share a little bit about the different kinds of bankruptcy just to give some perspective on what it means when you see those headlines of a company declaring bankruptcy. Second, Jared's going to talk a little bit about a couple of the questions that we have tended to get, especially during this time of uncertainty, and that is now a good time to retire, or will I be able to retire even, given what's happened in my portfolio? So we're going to tackle that one. And number three, we spend a lot of time on Zoom at Omega, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Zoom fatigue. And I've got a quick little hack for our viewers on maybe how to make that fatigue a little bit less. So, keep in mind in the future, we're going to be providing weekly updates as we've been doing, and ideas for you to think about, ponder, and connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel. We welcome comments, thoughts, new ideas. So now for today's show, I'm going to talk a little bit about bankruptcy. Like I said, I've been complaining a little bit about this because for a couple of reasons. As a small business owner, we don't get to do the same things that big businesses do. And most of us, if you've been watching the news, have seen the headlines. Most recently, Hertz declaring bankruptcy. A lot of retail companies, right, Jared? You had seen a number of them that are declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah, like I know J. Crew, talked about Neiman Marcus, J.C. Penney, a couple of other ones. So yep. Retail is getting hit pretty hard right now, as we all know. So they're, of course, having some troubles, but talked about what else is going on with bankruptcy.
Yeah, so I want to actually unpack for a moment the different kinds of bankruptcy. So if you're an individual, you normally have two types of bankruptcy, and they're called chapters just because of the code, really. Chapter 7 is when you are going to completely get rid of your debt. That's the most drastic, severe kind of bankruptcy. You can't make your payments. You can't handle the debt that you have, whether it's credit card or mortgages or whatever it is. So you declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The other option, a little more flexible, is Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Basically, the idea is that you're going to work things out with your creditors, maybe change the payment period, maybe change the payment size, interest rates, whatever it might be. For businesses, there's also Chapter 7, which is the liquidation kind of bankruptcy, where the business is going to close their doors, never open again. But Chapter 11 is the one that you're actually hearing the most about. It is reorganizing. Companies do this for a number of reasons. One of the reasons they do it is that they've just got too much debt. The debt has gotten too expensive. They don't have enough income coming in, and now they just can't keep up with the debt payments. Another reason is, often we've seen this in the past with some of the airlines, is that they have a lot of pension benefits, retiree benefits, health benefits, things like that, and they can't handle it, and they want to try to get out from under that. I'll talk a little bit about airlines because they're near and dear to me. So most of the headlines we've seen in the last few months around declaring bankruptcy, you'll notice they hardly ever say what kind of bankruptcy has been Chapter 11. But what's actually been happening is that often a company will start with Chapter 11, try to work out with their creditors how to pay, but if they can't, like in the case of Pier 1, which actually declared bankruptcy in February, so really before everything hit, they're now shutting down. Whereas J. Crew is the one that is, they are also, I guess they're just in Chapter 11 normally, Modell's is going to liquidate. They haven't been able to work things out. So they're going to liquidate Tuesday morning, which is one of my mom's favorites. They're going to close all their stores. But JCPenney is actually just closing some of the stores. And I know you had a thought about that as far as what might be happening for Penny's.
Right. I had seen and read about some speculation that Amazon might be stepping in and purchasing JCPenney's and using their locations as a hub. Maybe you go into that store and you browse the Amazon essentials or like the top picks from Amazon. Maybe you could exchange some packages, pick up packages. I think they have a deal with Kohl's where you can do that already, but maybe just.
Yeah, so I think it's really, I think it's smart on their part to be able to do that. So you frozen.
Do so too.
Yeah. Yep. So now one of the things that I guess sort of annoys me, as I mentioned, the airlines, and by the way, Hertz is probably, they have declared Chapter 11, but what may happen for them is if they may have to get bought, they may have to merge. If they can't work things out because they have mountains of debt, they may have to close or figure something out. I know probably the next step will be to try to figure out if they can get rid of the debt. Then from there, do we need to merge or get bought? And then from there, I hope, because I love Hertz, I hope they won't go away, but maybe that's going to happen. The airlines, interestingly, have declared, the big legacy carriers, American and United, have declared bankruptcy a couple of times. United in 2002, after, we had 9/11, and then 2006, and American, it was 2011 and 2013. In their cases, they have a lot of retiree pension debt, or, obligations. And then also just because of they're leasing airplanes in some cases, so a lot of debt. And yet they've come away, they've cleared the way, either gotten rid of the debt or restructured it, and we still fly those airlines. For small businesses, for individuals, not so simple. And as a small business owner, honestly, that's a little frustrating. And when, we work with a lot of small businesses who, a lot of people have tight margins because consumers want inexpensive prices. And yet you've got to pay for people. And so that's why, people wonder, why are our businesses running on such tight margins? It's because consumers don't want to pay a lot of money. That doesn't leave much room to handle your cost of goods and your employees and their benefits and make any sort of profit. So, yeah. All right, I've ranted and raved enough about it. I don't know if you have any other further thoughts on that, Jared.
That was a pretty tame rant. I think behind the scenes, we might have heard a little bit more about bankruptcies, but that was good. A good summary about all the different ones. And I think what I mainly think about is, it's challenging, I think, when you compare businesses and people. One of the debts that we talk about a lot with our younger clients is student loan debt. And we know that doesn't go away, even if you declare bankruptcy. That's got to be like one of the only debts I think that is like that.
Right. So even if you die, right? I mean,
yeah, even if you die.
If it's federal loans, then it can be forgiven. But if you've got those private student loans, your family's going to be paying those things.
Yeah. So I think it's a little frustrating for consumers to see these big corporations be able to reorganize their debts or go out of business and boom, it's all gone. But I think to your point, it's challenging. And I'm wondering, we recommend to clients that they keep 3 to 6 months of expenses on hand. Should businesses be thinking like that? Or is it just, out of the realm of reason? These businesses are running tight margins because they're trying to pass some savings on to customers, run very thin operations. But then when you hit times like this, it's super challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be nice. I think, we hear about the big tech companies that are sitting on, billions of dollars of cash. For most of us business owners, that's just not possible. We're not going to be sitting on that much cash. Ideally, you have that, or maybe you have a line of credit. That's often how businesses, and when things got really frothy in March, a lot of businesses went and took their full line of credit and held that cash at the bank just in case. As it turns out, in many cases, they didn't need it. But labor is not inexpensive in this country. Cost of goods is not inexpensive. As much as it seems like a great idea that you should have a big cushion as a business, it's not always possible, especially if you're trying to grow the business.
Right. Yeah. So it's challenging to I guess balance those two sides of bankruptcy.
Yep. So now let's talk about something completely different and probably near and dear to some of our clients and our viewers' hearts, and that's those questions that we get. Is this a good time to retire right now? And am I even going to be able to retire? So what do you think, Jared? How do you answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's no cookie cutter answer for this one. Yeah. It really requires someone to look at your expenses, what you're spending, what you're bringing in, running financial planning numbers. We can't emphasize that one enough. We at Omega try to update these numbers annually for our clients just to give them an up-to-date look at where they stand in retirement. And we've actually been doing some updates in the middle of this downturn. So it was a lot worse back in March. Now it's I think the market's down around 10%, maybe a little less or more given the day. So it's not as bad as it was back in March, but we're showing clients real time what it looks like in their retirement through all of this. So we're trying our best to answer that question with our clients by showing them an updated version of the financial planning numbers. And I think, that question has a lot of different other questions in it. So people aren't always in a great spot heading into retirement. We talk about bad timing so much with our clients when they're getting ready to retire. And that bad timing to us is back-to-back negative years in the market. So you've done a lot of work. You've worked your whole life to build up this nest egg and you have it set up, getting ready to retire. And then there's 2 back-to-back years, you start pulling off it and it shrinks because the market goes down at the same time. So that's what makes it bad timing. And there's a lot of different ways to mitigate that. But that's something we're focusing on right now with a lot of our clients who have either just retired or are about to retire, because that seems like it could be a possibility through all of this.
Right. And I mean, I guess, so, trying to mitigate bad timing risk is certainly a big factor in answering the question about, can I retire? Will I be able to retire? What's the other really important factor that can make or break a successful retirement scenario?
It's definitely how much you're spending and how long you plan to spend that, right? Like the longer you're going to spend a lot of money, typically, it doesn't take much thought to know that that's not going to work out as well as it would be if you're spending less. So if you're in a situation where you can reduce your spending heading into retirement, we absolutely recommend our clients taking a look at their budgets heading in and seeing what can go away. But if there are expenses that can't go away, a lot of times we talk to clients about, are there a side job or a consulting gig you can pick up for a couple of years? Because we know that the longer that you're able to delay tapping into your portfolio and bringing off big draws, that helps you on the backside. So it's not like you're going to retire typically and be hurting for money in the first 5 years. You're going to be looking at least when we're running numbers with clients and projections, the lean years are on the backside. So that's when they run out of money and it doesn't look great. And we're thinking of ways and scenarios we can adjust. So Definitely expenses play a huge factor in all of it. Probably the biggest.
We've been talking about the technical side. I think the other piece that we think is important, you were alluding to, maybe that sort of a gradual stepping down on the income. What we also know is that moving from accumulation to spending is emotionally and psychologically a big hurdle, and it can scare people when you stop having income coming in and now you're totally relying on the portfolio. So this idea that, you're talking about, Jared, where maybe you keep bringing in some part-time income, some consulting income to sort of decrescendo, to decrease and transition from pulling or from contributing to the portfolio to fully pulling off of it. Having that transition period seems to make it a lot easier for a lot of our clients to get comfortable with beginning to live off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something. And I think, just going cold turkey from working nonstop 1 minute to not at all the next it seems challenging. Like you have to think about, I think preparing as much as you can for life after retirement sets you up for retirement. Like, what are you going to do if your life is work and you're going to retire and then do nothing? That's not going to be fun. You're going to have a hard time, I think. So thinking about what life in retirement looks like for you, and maybe having that decrease in work, I think pays off.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got that cool checklist called Are You Ready to Retire? And yes, there are financial aspects to it, but there's a lot of emotional and other financial planning aspects to being well prepared for retirement that I think people need to be thinking about. A lot of times people are focused on the portfolio. Often, like with business owners, they'll have a number like, well, if I get $5 million from my business, won't I be good? Or if I get $10 million, well, the answer is it depends, right? Because if you spend $1 million a year, you're going to be out of money in 5 years or less. If you only spend 100 or 150,000, you might be great for many years from now. So that a whole idea of having like a number is not really useful, because it really, back to what you said, really the most important factor is how much are you going to spend in retirement?
Yeah, I just remember that commercial, with the numbers over people's heads, and they say, "Hey, what's your number?" And like, I don't know. Well, as planners, we know it doesn't work that simply. So I think that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, I think the bottom line is on this one that it's not just about your portfolio. It's not just about what your portfolio is worth or how it's invested. It's really thinking through how much do I need to live on? What other resources do I have? Have I structured the portfolio for what you talked about, which is bad timing risk? Having it all invested in growth and then expecting to weather bad timing risk is not a good strategy. And then there's all of the non-financial aspects, or maybe less financial, so tax planning and insurance planning, and then life planning, which is a big part of what we do at Omega, is helping to mentally prepare our clients, emotionally prepare them to make that transition. So it seems to me there isn't an easy answer. Probably the answer is it depends, right?
That's the only answer, I think. We can't say yes to everyone, unfortunately. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about the last topic, which is Zoom fatigue. Maybe you can talk a little bit first about, how you're feeling about all the Zoom meetings we've been on.
Well, I know for me, I'm probably in maybe a little under half of the Zoom calls that you're on. So I guess I'm lucky compared to some people, but still, even like comparatively to other people, I'm on way more Zoom calls than they are. So it is a little challenging. I think, sometimes I find myself wondering if this could be a conference call. I think we might have had a couple of Zoom meetings where they could have been conference calls. I don't really need to see you. You don't need to see me, kind of thing. But it was really exciting at first, and now we're 3 months in, and we're talking about working from home for the rest of the summer. So at this point, it seems like a long haul. But at the same time, I understand it's important as we're doing business with people. Seeing each other, talking face to face, that's important. But just trying to find that balance is going to be important also as we move forward.
Absolutely. And, I think what makes it tiring, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. I continue to read more about it. As human beings, we are fine-tuned observers of human body language, and there's a lot going on in our brains that is calculating how we respond, what we think is happening for the other person that we're interacting with. And there's no doubt, even with the best connectivity, best internet connection, it doesn't always line up. And so for our brains, I think it gets really confusing because we're trying to sort it out to figure out, like, is Jared upset with me? Does he think this is funny? Is he paying attention? Is he actually looking at something else while he's supposedly looking at me? So we're trying to, as human beings, we're trying to figure all that out, and it's tiring. And then there's just the normal screen. We all know that too much screen time, isn't great for your eyes, hence why I got to wear the glasses half the time. So there's that aspect. And the other piece that we're learning is, because when you're on Zoom, you're looking at yourself, even if you're a small little picture on there, in normal human interaction, we don't look at ourselves unless there's a mirror, in front of us or something. That's just, I think for a lot of people, it's almost like this doesn't compute. I'm seeing myself. You can get into like, oh, I don't like how my hair looks. I should have picked a different shirt, right?
Yep.
That whole
Yeah.
dialogue, which after a while for your brain is just tiring. So my little hack is that for those folks, if you're on a Zoom call, normally at the top right-hand corner of your picture is a little blue box with 3 dots, and you can rename what it says, who you are. There's other things you can do, but one of them is that you can hide your view of yourself. And I highly recommend it. Now, when it's just 2 people, you still may see a small version of yourself, but when it's 3 people, you go away from the screen totally. And I have to say, I tried that yesterday. One of my other associates, Davis, our associate, showed me that little hack, and I used it yesterday. And honestly, it made it a lot better for me. So I'm hoping that helps not only you, Jared, but it helps some of our viewers.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one. I'm gonna have to give it a shot. I think one of the other questions I'm starting to think about as we talk about this is there's been a lot of speculation about what is business going to look like moving forward. And thinking about it from the point of view of a young person, so much of moving forward in the workforce and moving up that career ladder for a lot of big companies, I think it's a lot easier maybe for smaller companies, but for big companies, a lot of it is interpersonal skills and politics, to say it crassly, just
being seen,
rise the ranks. Yeah. So we've got some news that like big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, to name a couple, are saying people can work from home indefinitely. But how is that going to affect the business? Like, how are people? I can't imagine thinking about it, even still coming into a firm like Omega when I was 22, straight out of college. How do I let you know that I'm ready to work, I'm eager to take on new things? How do I have that come across in Zoom and not have this Zoom fatigue show up? So it's going to be challenging. I don't know if I'm completely bearish on offices going away forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we're certainly talking about internally. We're reading about, we're trying to understand how we'll interact with our clients, how our clients want to interact with us. And I think that's such a great point, not only for you, just in general as a young person. What I'm also concerned about is for young women professionals, for people of color, young professionals, people of color, where it's already hard to sort of break into the circles and to be seen professionally sometimes. And so, and if you don't have the same kind of social interactions, how are you going to do that? Or the just being in front of your senior leaders? I think, Jerry, that's a really great question that, we should continue to talk about.
Yeah. I know we're going to have a virtual intern this summer, and that's something that we're going to have to focus on too, is we're getting him trained and up to speed on all of our different functions and practices. And, something that you've been thinking about is how do you continue the culture virtually? And it's challenging. Yeah.
It is. It is. Well, we really appreciate everybody joining us today. Again, we look forward to connecting with you. Please send us any topic ideas or comments you have. We welcome those, and we appreciate you tuning in today.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Take care.